Welcome, traveler. You found your way to stories where the night is quiet, the fire is warm, and the world outside no longer matters. Tell me, what has kept you up this late? And what hour has the clock struck where you lay? Tonight, let me tell you the tale of a feline from a land of ice and shadow, a cat of wisdom, mystery, and fate. Breathe deep, settle in, and let the story carry you into sleep. The queen had a beautiful cat, the color of smoke, with china blue eyes. Wherever the queen went, the cat followed. She sat proudly beside her, even when the queen rode in her fine glass carriage. But one day, as the queen stroked the soft fur, a sigh escaped her lips. "Oh, my dear kitty," she murmured, "you are happier than I am, for you have a kitten just like you. And I have nobody to play with but you." The cat tilted her head, watching her mistress with wise eyes. Then she gently placed a paw on the queen's arm. "Do not cry," she said. "Crying never does any good. I will see what can be done." True to her word, the cat slipped away as soon as they returned to the palace. She trotted into the deep forest where an old fairy lived among the trees, and soon after, a miracle happened. The queen gave birth to a little girl, a child made of snow and sunbeams. The queen was delighted. The baby was strong and bright, and she loved the kitten. She would not sleep unless the kitten lay curled up beside her, and so they grew together. Months passed. The baby was still small, but the kitten grew quickly. And then, one evening, when the nurse went to find her, the kitten was gone. A great search began. The servants searched everywhere, for they knew the queen would reward whoever found the kitten. They opened tiny boxes in case she had somehow crawled inside. They pulled books from the shelves, checked inside cupboards and drawers, but it was no use. The kitten had vanished, and nobody knew if she would ever return. Years passed. The little princess, Ingebjorg, grew into a happy child. One day, as she played in the garden, she threw her ball too far. It rolled into a clump of rose bushes. She ran after it, stooping down to search through the long grass, and then a voice called her name. "Ingebjorg, Ingebjorg." She froze. The voice was soft yet familiar. She turned her head, and there, among the roses, a cat sat watching her. But not just any cat, a beautiful one, with fur the color of smoke and china blue eyes. "Ingebjorg," the cat whispered, "have you forgotten me? I am Kisa, your sister." The princess blinked, confused. "But I never had a sister," she said slowly. Kisa's eyes shone. "Don't you remember how I slept beside you every night? How you would cry for me until I came? But girls have such short memories," Kisa sighed. I could still find my way to your room even now if I stepped inside the palace." Ingebjorg was about to ask why Kisa had left, but suddenly her attendants arrived, breathless, and when they saw the strange cat, their eyes widened in horror. "Princess, step away," they cried, and before Ingebjorg could stop her, Kisa vanished into the bushes. That evening, when the queen came to bid her daughter good night, Ingebjorg told her everything, and to her surprise, her mother smiled. "Yes, my child," she said, "it is true what Kisa told you. I would have liked to see her again myself. Perhaps someday she will return, and when she does, you must bring her to me." The next morning was hot, and Ingebjorg longed for the cool shade of the forest. She begged to go, and as usual, her attendants let her do as she pleased. Deep among the trees, she found a soft, mossy bank where a little stream tinkled by. Her attendants, sleepy from the heat, quickly dozed off, and seeing this, the princess grinned. She had dreamed of seeing fairies, of finding elves hiding behind trees. She would go looking for them, so she wandered deeper into the woods. But alas, she found no fairies dancing, no little creatures peeping from behind leaves. Instead, from the shadows of a cave, something huge stepped forward, a horrible giant. His eyes glowed, his voice rumbled. "Follow me, girl," he ordered, and though fear gripped her heart, she dared not disobey. She walked behind him through the twisting paths of the forest. Her legs grew tired, her heart pounded, and at last she could take no more. Tears welled in her eyes. The giant turned sharply. "I hate girls who cry," he growled. "But if you want to cry, I will give you something to cry for." And before Ingebjorg could react, he lifted his axe. With one swift motion, he cut off both her feet. She screamed. The giant picked them up, stuffed them into his pocket, and without another word, he left her there. Ingebjorg lay in the grass. Pain burned through her. She felt dizzy, weak, helpless. Would she die here alone? Would anyone ever find her? Time passed slowly. The sun hung high in the sky. And then she heard wheels. A cart was coming through the trees. She gathered all her strength and shouted. A voice answered at once. "I am coming." And in another moment, a cart burst through the trees, and at the reins was Kisa. Her tail flicked like a whip, urging the horse faster. She leapt down. Her strong front paws lifted Ingebjorg gently. She laid her in the soft hay of the cart and turned the horse toward home. In the corner of her small hut, Kisa piled soft cushions. She placed Ingebjorg upon them. The princess, too weak to move, drank greedily from the bowl of milk Kisa brought, then sank into sleep. Kisa worked quickly. She took dried herbs, soaked them in warm water, and tied them onto the princess's wounded legs. The pain vanished. Ingeborg smiled faintly. "You will sleep now," said Kisa gently. "I must leave for a little while, but I will lock the door and no one can hurt you." But before she could finish, the princess had already fallen asleep. Kisa did not waste time. She hopped back into the cart and turned toward the giant's cave. She had work to do. Kisa hid the cart behind the trees and crept toward the giant's cave. The air inside was thick with smoke. The giant and his wife sat at the table eating their supper. Kisa crouched in the shadows, ears perked, listening. "The first day I can spare," the giant grumbled, his voice like rolling thunder. "I shall go back and kill her." His wife nodded, stirring the pot over the fire. "It would never do for people in the forest to know that a mere girl could defy you," she sneered. They laughed cruelly, but as they did, Kisa moved silently toward the cooking pot, and with a flick of her paw, she tipped a whole bag of salt into the broth. A few spoonfuls later, the giant groaned, "Dear me, how thirsty I am." "So am I," his wife gasped, fanning her mouth. "I do wish I had not taken that last spoonful of broth. Something was wrong with it. If I don't get some water, I shall die," the giant bellowed. And with that, the two of them rushed out of the cave, racing toward the river. The moment they were gone, Kisa darted inside. She searched every corner until she found the patch of grass beneath which Ingebjorg's feet were hidden. She pulled them free, tucked them into the cart, and without a sound, she drove back to the hut. Ingebjorg woke with a start, her heart still heavy with fear. But when she saw Kisa standing in the doorway, and in her paws, her own feet wrapped in silver slippers, she let out a cry of joy. "Oh, is it really you?" Kisa purred softly, stepping closer. "In 2 minutes, they shall be as tight as they ever were." She took strings of magic grass and bound the feet back to the legs. The moment she tied the last knot, Ingebjorg felt whole again. "You must not try to walk yet," Kisa warned gently. "But if you are patient, perhaps in a week, I shall carry you home." And so she did. 1 week later, a strange sight was seen at the palace gates. A cart moving swiftly, a cat at the reins, her tail flicking like a whip, urging the horse faster, and beside her sat Ingebjorg, safe and whole. When the king and queen saw their lost daughter, they wept with joy. They swore that no reward could be too great for the one who had saved her. Kisa only bowed and turned her horse's head. She vanished before they could thank her properly, but Ingebjorg could not forget. She grew quiet and pale. She would not eat. She would not drink. She did not care for the golden dresses or the jewels her parents brought her. She only sighed for the friend she had lost again. "She will die of sadness," the courtiers whispered. "We have tried everything. There is nothing left." "Nothing," the king sighed, "except marriage." And so They invited all the handsomest young men from the neighboring kingdoms and bade Ingiborg choose one. For a long time she said nothing. Then at last she chose a young prince, a man whose eyes were like the pools in the forest, whose hair shone like gold. The king and queen were pleased. The wedding was prepared, and when the marriage was over, at last Kisa returned. Ingiborg ran to her at once. She clasped her in her arms. "You have come back," she cried, but Kisa only smiled. "I have come to claim my reward," she said. "Let me sleep at the foot of your bed, just for this night." Ingiborg blinked. "Is that all?" Kisa nodded. "It is enough." And so that night Kisa curled up at the foot of the bed, and when the morning came, she was no longer a cat. A beautiful princess lay upon the bed, her hair soft as moonlight, her eyes bright as morning. Ingiborg stared in wonder. "My mother and I were once enchanted," Kisa said. "A spiteful fairy cursed us both, and we could only be freed by performing a kindness never done before. My mother died without ever finding the chance, but I took the cruelty of the giant and I turned it into kindness." The king and queen rejoiced. They begged Kisa to stay, and for a time she did, until one day she too found love and left to rule a kingdom of her own. And so there was no more sadness, no more tears, only peace and happiness. And now, dear traveler, you are still awake. The rain taps against the caravan. The fire has burned low. Your eyes are heavy, yet still you linger. Perhaps it is time to rest, to let your dreams carry you to soft places, to follow Kisa into the quiet woods where the air is cool and the stars shine softly above. Close your eyes now. Let sleep find you. Good night, dear traveler. Sweet dreams.